use every acid on the planet to wipe you off the face of the earth.
Fuck off, you cheeky little fucking 12-year-old cunt, before I stretch your fucking asshole to the size of fucking Mars.
It was back in 1973, and I just got out of college. I was a fairly intelligent man. I got a master's in English, and boy was I ready to conquer the world. With my minor in art, I was set up to do great things. I took out a loan for a small house right on the countryside. And as I sat down on that hilltop and painted the clouds as they ran by, I sat underneath a tree and wrote all kinds of poetry. And I was living life simple, as it should be. I had all the time to read into my favorite philosophers, all the time to get into all the hobbies I'm into now, mainly astronomy, looking with my telescope at the night sky. It was complete bliss. But one day, to my dismay, I realized, with a knock at the door, that perhaps this wasn't here to stay. I flung open the door and I said hello, and I was greeted by the face of a man who wanted to garner deceit. And I said, "Sir, what's your business here? Can't you see this is a private domicile? I do not wish to be bothered." And he simply looked at me and he took off his hat and he said, "I'm the landlord, and you owe me money." And I said, "Well, I've never heard of you." He goes, "Well, you signed here." And he took out the contract I signed for the lease on the house. And he goes, "If you'd look on the fine print, you can tell that you owe me $300,000 by the end of the month." And I said, $300,000? And I took off my glasses, my sunglasses, my fingerless gloves, and my fedora. And I said, "That is despicable. Where am I supposed to get $300,000? And the man simply replied, "I don't care how you do it, but it has to be in my wallet by the end of the month, which is in 3 days, or you're going to be getting evicted, thrown in jail, and all of your possessions will be stripped from you. You'll be ruined." And I simply sighed and said, "All right," and shut the door. At night that night, I lied down in bed with my eyes wide open, sweat still running down my forehead from that encounter, and I was still a little bit upset. But in the morning, I had an idea. I checked into my local newspaper to look for job offerings that my skills as a poet and an artist could have been used for. And sadly, no such jobs were needed. So, I did the next best thing. I put an ad out in the paper saying anybody who needs help writing poetry or doing art could call me at my number, 1-800-333-4343. And, as a side note, I noted how I was a military sergeant in the Vietnam War. And with a couple hours past, a ring on the telephone was heard, and I answered with glee. "Who is there?" I asked. And a raspy voice on the other side said my name. "Tim." I go, "Yes, that's me." "Tim, I need your services." And I go, "All right, my services, all right. Yeah, what do you need? Poetry, art?" "Shut up!" "All right, well, what? What? That's rude."
Sorry, but you're military, right?"
Yeah, I'm military. What about it?"
"I need you to kill someone."
For how much? How much are we talking here?"
$300,000.
All right, deal. All right, don't have to talk anymore. And so I hung up, went over to his house, and he was there with his bag of money. He goes, alright, all you gotta do is kill this guy. And he gave me a picture, and it was of this sleazy man. Very, very odd. I believe his name was Jacob S., but I didn't look too much into him.
Jacob Sartorius?
He was wearing a very greasy sweatshirt. And I said, alright, yeah, I'll kill this guy. Sure. And so, with my AK-47 assault rifle with 30-round magazine clip automatic fully, caliber millimeter 9mm stat track, Dragon lore, I set out on my mission. It was a prized possession from Vietnam, where I disarmed 3 gooks and lined them up like sandbags before I shot the enemy, killed him, and threw 3 grenades, securing my squadron. And it was only until then I realized that I had all the ammo I needed to finish the job. I ran out to the address. It was a Chuck E. Cheese's, but it was past closing time. I walked inside and waved at the white man behind the counter. He said, hey, what's going on? And then he noticed my gun. And I said, hi, what's up? And he said, that's a gun. And I go, you're right. He goes, yeah, well, you're white, so you're obviously not here to kill me. I go, absolutely. And I walked inside. I go, do you know where a man named Jacob S. is? He goes, oh, yeah, the little kid, the birthday party guy. Yeah, he's over there. He's sitting in the back. And he was there with the rosy cheeks and a beautiful hat on and a wonderful sweatshirt. He was hugging his mom, and his mom said with a low whisper, oh, honey, I just love you. And Jacob replied, I love you too, Mom. And they had a nice hug. And then the cake was brought out. And everyone was silent. And then all hell broke loose as I emptied my 30-round clip magazine into the kid, into his face. I shot his mother 3 times in the left tit and saw it deflate. Milk was spurting out. The lactation was insane. She was crying and screaming, my baby. And I said, he's not a baby. He's like, what, 7? Like, come on. You gotta, like, get off the training wheels. Stop coddling your son. I mean, Jesus Christ. And I shot her in the head to finish her off. And then I killed the rest of people at the birthday party, including the children, because I just didn't give a fuck. So, as I finished up there with that business, I walked up to the guy at the counter. And he said, oh, you killed them. And I said, all right, yeah. So, yeah, I did. He goes, all right. Well, can I get you anything? I said, well, I got, what, 50 tickets here? I just took it off the body. He goes, yeah, you can get, what's this, a plastic ring? I go, well, what does it do? He goes, nothing. It's made out of plastic. It goes around your finger. And he goes, oh, really? He goes, yeah. He goes, yeah, fuck, sure, all right. So I got the plastic ring and I slid it on, and I said, all right, yeah, this is pretty fashionable. How do I look? He goes, hey, you kind of look like shit. And I go, oh, all right. So I took off the ring and I shot him in the head and I walked out. And I went up to the old raspy guy and I said, yeah, he's dead. And he goes, all right, here's your 300K. And I go, yeah. So 2 days passed and I was at that hilltop again, painting those majestic clouds that I was painting only 3 nights prior. And I heard footsteps coming up. And it was the guy again, the sleazeball, who sold me that lease. And I said, hey, look who it is. And he goes, I'm back. Where's the money? And I said, I got it right here. And I pulled out the sack of cash, and I put it in his pocket. And he goes, wow, you're trying to put it in my pocket. You know, it's a sack of cash. It doesn't really fit in there. I go, yeah, you're right. But, here, I'll put it on the floor for you so you can count it all. He goes, all right. So he starts counting through the money. And I take out my AK-47 fully automatic clip gun. And I shoot him. I blast him right in front of me. And he's dead there on the ground bleeding and screaming. And I said, that $300,000 is mine. And I don't have to pay that fucking lease. I'll pay you in blood. And I blasted him as the moon faded over the hills, and the stars came out, and the constellations bloomed with such amazing gloom, and I knew with a tear trickling down my eye and a smile creeping across my face, that this house was a match made in heaven.